up! Ever get the feeling that you could write better endings than the studios do? If so, you're not alone. Tonight we'll hear how one creator with a vision would have handled some of your favorite shows and films. It's time to write the rewrite, and that starts right now. Greetings and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Brandon Bridges, and this is B Squared. Got something extra special for you tonight, and this goes out to anybody that was disappointed by the finales of Lost, Game of Thrones, Babylon 5, and any other ending that was confusing or just what the heck? Now, if you're like me, and let's be honest, who is, you've seen a lot of TV series in your day. I've got more TV box sets and complete film collections than I can count, and for the most part it's great stuff. But every once in a while you come across something that was great while it lasted and then trips at the finish line. And just speaking for myself, Lost is about the worst offender there is. But what if you were the one doing the writing? Could you do it better? What would you come up with for the last plot twist of the show or movie that you really loved? Tonight's guest is a creative thinker who brings creative answers to your creative questions. And did I mention he's creative? Let's welcome Tones Overthinks It, the guy who thinks too much to make up for those that don't think at all. Tones, welcome to you, sir.
Hello, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. This is one that I think a lot of my legacy subscribers will enjoy. This channel has kind of made a name for itself as the place where that guy had those 3 Star Trek films. So nerds hang out here, and this is they don't know it yet, but this is a special event for all of them. So, and I couldn't think of a better person to do it with. So, very glad to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm one of those people who, as I started watching your channel and seeing some of the content you produced and the fan projects with the Star Trek or Star Trek fan projects were the first things I noticed.
Oh, stop! I'm blushing. Nah, that's cool, and I say it all the time, but I continue to be humbled by the amount of attention and interest those 3 films continue to attract. So, as every broadcaster says eventually, thank you for watching, sir. So, those of you that are in the Frauditor and Sovsit watch community will no doubt know who Tones Overthinks It is, but to those that don't, you can probably guess that he's a member of the Sovsit and Frauditor watch community, and like Artie and Kfar, who have been on this channel before, he too has his own successful YouTube channel, but also like Kfar and Artie, he has kind of his own unique take on the content. So, Tones, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, first and foremost about myself, unlike some of my colleagues who I'm very humble myself, I say they do better work than I do, but I'm someone who is not claiming to be an expert. I'm not a law student or a lawyer. I'm not a former law enforcement or military or anything. I'm just a normal guy with his own opinion. And I feel like in a way that's a great way to analyze what these frauditors and sovereign citizens do, because in a sense I'm leveling the playing field. I have just as much, if not more or less information than they do. But I'm still able to look at what they do, and I'm still able to judge, hey, is this right or wrong? And surprise, a lot of the times they're wrong, even if I don't have a degree or expertise to actually find or to judge that.
And the thing that just speaking as one of your subscribers, by the way, if you're not subscribed to Tones Overthinks It's channel, don't go away. But when tonight's show ends, go subscribe to his channel. You'll like what you see, you'll love what you see, and you won't regret it. Tones Overthinks It would appreciate it, and so would I. But speaking as one of your subscribers, I will say I like the fact that you bring, how shall I put it, your own comedic twist to how you present things. And there are many of your videos where you've just come out and called it like it is, and I just love it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do try to make it funny, especially because you're watching people who are acting absolutely at their worst. So, and it could be, and when you're like me and you have to watch a lot of people do this day after day, it could take its toll. I mean, I don't have anxiety issues, but you know, I can get a bit short with some of these guys. Like, I just want to punch my monitor sometimes, and I'm also a guy with blood pressure problems. So yeah, I'm sure I certainly picked the best content to prolong my life.
Oh, certainly. But like so much else, it's how you respond to it. And
exactly.
And I gotta say, like I said, the way that you respond to some of these idiots with a J is classic.
Well, I try to break it up, like, with I'd like to throw a gag in there, anything that could just make you crack a smile. That way, you're not just watching this with doom and gloom and dread. It's like no, I want you to walk away from this thinking that was hysterical. That guy was an idiot.
Do you have a favorite among the stuff that you've made?
Well, let's see. My most recent one was pretty funny, but the one that as of late was the most hysterical was a First Amendment auditor who went to a post office, and I even had to put it in the title. He was the dumbest frauditor I had ever witnessed that week.
This is the guy that was packing and claimed he forgot, yes. And that guy.
Yeah, it was bad enough that he was reading the very rules that say why he can't do what he's doing and is completely ignorant of it. When he references it in the video, bear in mind, he's editing this after the fact. He is doubling down on the stupidity. Like, he is someone in such denial. It's almost pathetic, but he actually had to edit Poster 7, the rules governing conduct. Like, he had to edit it on his screen to try to sell it. I'm thinking, anybody who knows how to use a keyboard and knows where Google is going to find out you're lying, right? It's like, and yet he doesn't fathom that. And yes, he turns out to have a firearm in his pocket that his hand is constantly in throughout his encounter with two police officers. It's like, that's not going to end well for you.
And to those watching that don't know what we're talking about, this is the type of behavior that's typical for what Tones is describing is more common for frauditors than it is for sovsits, because frauditors always look for Poster 7. And like we talked about when Kfar was here, they look at it, they read it, but whether by design or by stupidity, my money's on the latter, they focus on the parts that they claim support what they're doing, and they ignore the other 80% of the document that says "thou shalt not."
Exactly. I make it a point in there to say, like, okay, everything that we've seen so far has made it pretty obvious that you're in violation. Like, this is a situation where Poster 7 is clearly at the forefront. Like, it applies to this situation 100%, and you're the one who's in violation of it. Mm-hmm. And it's like. And they don't get it. Well,
and I don't know if you saw the short that Kfar put out this afternoon. It was an excerpt from a previous video about that guy that went to the courthouse and shot the signs that say no recording in courtrooms as he recorded from within the courtroom. Yeah. And the short this afternoon was when he found himself in the law library, he was like, wow, I couldn't help it. I left a couple of comments on there, but the best one was, he goes, wow. And Statler and Waldorf, those two old guys from the Muppets?
Oh, yes.
I left a comment that was like, the frauditor goes, wow. Statler goes, he's amazed by the inside of the library. And Waldorf says, oh, that's because it's the first time he's ever seen one.
I love those two guys.
Oh, man. There's a reason people are afraid to give me the microphone at parties, and you've just heard it.
Now, for what it's worth, man, I come up with 10 puns a day, and I think maybe only one of them is funny, and the rest are just dead on arrival.
Hey, I think that's absolutely punderful. It's good that you don't underestimate the value of good humor. Yeah. Or the ice cream bars that bear that name, for that matter. You're talking to the guy that once, true story, about 7 or 8 years ago, the Starbucks that I went to every day, the barista got to know me, and there came a day when she handed me a bag that said Mr. Punderful. And I'll do you one better. The last time I changed jobs, one of my going away presents was a card game called Punderdome. the card game for people who love puns. People have said to me since then, yeah, that's exactly what you need, encouragement. There's a reason that game is still wrapped in its freshness seal cellophane.
I was going to say, now that you've mentioned it, now I got to go looking for it. Because people I know will see that and they go, oh God, this was made for you. I mean, I was just watching a Sovereign Citizen at a traffic stop, and for some reason it just came to mind, about it was a seatbelt violation, and I'm just thinking like, oh, like he's talking about like, oh, the whole I'm being forced to do this, I'm being forced to do that. I'm thinking, and it just out of nowhere, I just randomly say to my dad, like when I happened to be visiting at the time, and I just say to him, if you're forced to fasten your seatbelt, does that mean you buckle under pressure?
I like that. I love that.
That was his reaction too.
Now I'm hoping some of my coworkers see this, because people at my job, if you're watching, the people that I work with, I've tried to tell you, I'm not the only one. There are more of us out there. And actually, that reminds me of a question that I've had for a while. So when people maybe you know the answer to this. When people wear cowboy boots, does that qualify as ranch dressing?
Oh, God. Oh.
People that I work with, that one's for you. I even got Kfar with a couple of them the other night. So he just passed 5,000 subscribers, right?
Yep. Which
is typically expressed as 5K. So I asked him, now that you've passed this milestone, does that mean we have to start calling you 5K Far?
Oh,
that was pretty much his reaction.
God, now I'm wondering, why didn't I think of that?
Well, he's come so K-far since he started. It's just wonderful to see, isn't it?
Oh. Yeah, he's definitely a very special K-far. So.
Yes, he is. I think I saw someone leave that in his comments the other day. That is epic. That one I like the best. And K-far, if you're watching this, and if not, you should be. We love you. We only tease people we like. So there you go.
Amen to that.
Oh, me. Does it ever occur to you that maybe we have too much fun doing stuff like this?
The thoughts crossed my mind.
Oh, well, if that's the worst thing we do today, then it's a good day.
There you go. I mean, it could be worse. You could end up, getting multiple arrests, getting tased, all that stuff, just because, you want to run around with your camera and put it in people's faces and act like a doofus.
Nah, we have too much common sense for that. And pretty sure we both have jobs, too, so,
Yep, absolutely. And the funny thing is, I actually have said many times that the other way I also, my style in this is, I just use common sense. Like, I just look at that and I just say, you know what? Because getting back to First Amendment auditors, who I consider them to be an offshoot of SovCits, or Sovereign Citizens for short. SovCit for short of Sovereign Citizen. Blah, I can't speak. I consider them to be an offshoot, but I consider them to be a lot more vindictive, in my opinion. Like they could be real jerks. And the only question I have is, like, if you're the kind of person who seems to have this incredibly self-righteous desire to defend a right to be a nasty person, I mean, does that make it right? No, it's still wrong. I mean, just because it's the fact of the matter is, you shouldn't have a written law telling you to be a decent person. Mm-hmm. Like, that should be something that's naturally good. Like, you would think to be a decent person. Yeah.
You would think so, but you used the C word a minute ago, common sense, which I guess is a C phrase, but hopefully you see what I mean. See what I did there. But, it was pointed out in the chat in Kfar's episode the other day that common sense is increasingly uncommon, and you said it perfectly. The only thing that they're defending is your right to be a jerk. And as you say that, just curious, but have you ever seen anything from Steve Leto or Leto's Law?
Yes, I've seen a few of his videos. I know I know he covered a couple of Sovereign Citizen related stuff, but recently he's been covering more of, like, when companies do something stupid or when there's huge lawsuits, things like that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring that up is a couple of weeks ago, he did a story about a person that showed up at I think it was a Renaissance fair, and he was wearing a shirt that said "F the police." And
oh boy.
Yeah, and it went over, from his description, it sounds like it went over about as well as you'd expect. The cops were called. By the time that they arrived on scene, I want to say that the guy had actually changed his shirt, but they still knew who he was. And the the organizers for the Ren Fair told him to leave, and the police enforced that. And when he covered the story, what he focused on was when that goes to trial. If it goes to a trial by jury, there is no reason to believe that jury isn't going to look at that guy and say, you brought it on yourself because of what you said, and it's not a popular opinion, and really has no place at a fair like that. And I would agree with that.
Yeah, it comes down to the original statement of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. I mean, like these guys, what's so stupid about all this is they are doing this because they think the First Amendment is at risk, and if they do this, they are strengthening it. They're reminding the government to respect your First Amendment rights, as if somehow after 250 years, 47 presidents, 117 Congresses, we're suddenly now thinking of repealing the First Amendment. Like, no, they're not. Like, they don't have to be reminded. They've never stopped. The fact that you're allowed to post that video on the internet tells you that the First Amendment still exists. But the fact is they're doing this, and it could actually have consequences. It could actually cause legislation and actual written law to be in place, because suddenly now we have to make it law to not be a dick to people.
And states left and right are passing and so are cities, are passing legislation to control these people. The last one that I remember seeing was Florida. There was some bill that they had in their state legislature. I don't think it was aimed specifically. Well, let me rephrase that. The language was not aimed specifically at 1A frauditors. In other words, First Amendment auditing was not mentioned, but they were circumspectly describing frauditors. And like, in principle, I have no issue with kind of putting a stop to some of this stuff, but like they're causing the very thing that they allegedly fear.
Yeah, and the silly part is there is a way to legitimately audit the First Amendment. If you're first of all, if you're so concerned that it's going to disappear overnight, I mean, first of all, I think you might be a little paranoid, but at the same time, like, if you're so concerned, like, then maybe you don't really have as much faith in it, because as long as you believe it to be true, as long as you believe that it exists, you shouldn't have any reason to doubt it. But these guys do. But if you absolutely have to test the First Amendment, how do you do it? Engage in, like what we're doing, and engage in passionate discourse in a public forum. Write books, publish articles, do videos like this, participate in peaceful demonstrations, write to your elected officials to express grievances or desire for reform. If you can do all of those things and the government doesn't kick down your door to come arrest you strictly for that action, then the First Amendment's fine.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's there for. That's what it protects you from. It allows, it says go to the church you want, vote for the person you want, express a yay or nay attitude towards what that elected person does. If you're not in trouble for just that, fine.
You forgot the single most important thing that you can do to be a First Amendment auditor. Be like PayPal Patty and scream, "That's my purse! I don't know you!"
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm sorry, I had to.
No. That's a given. That actually is true. I mean, discount Bobby Hill. He's God knows where he is now. I mean, he got demonetized off of YouTube and Facebook. He can't make money doing what he's doing. So, and he's no longer, as I think as you and Kfar discussed, a lot of these guys are just unemployable. Like they just, like they've completely screwed up their lives. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen later down the road? I mean, I once, in a video, I once predicted the future. Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm pretty sure it will. I was predicting the future for a certain auditor who will remain nameless. Let's just say his name has the same initials as Babbling Stupid Butthurt Troll.
I'm guessing this is an individual who is missing certain features of his teeth and all that other good stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's supposed to have 32 in there, and I don't think he made it to 30.
And this is the guy with a penchant for getting friends' cars towed too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And pretty much what I had said was like, you're going to keep doing this, and where is it going to end? Like, there's only one way it's going to end. You're just going to end up being this bitter, spiteful shell of a man who just lives in his car, with no job, no home, and no family, just clutching your camera, yelling at people just to feel alive. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm describing Glenn Serio, who, as far as I'm concerned, he's on the far end of the evolutionary, or in this case, de-evolutionary scale of the First Amendment auditor. That's how all auditors are going to end up. Sooner or later, they're going to end up like that.
So if this sounds like an interesting topic for anybody out there, there's a lot more on Tones' channel, on Artie's, on KFAR's, and we're going to have some other members of the community on in our next couple of episodes. So there's a lot of great content out there on this topic. So make sure you go and like and subscribe. But start with Tones Overthinks It, because he's the one who's on tonight, and he's the one we're promoting. And his catchphrase is perfect for the people that he deals with.
Oh, yeah. Well, welcome to Tones Overthinks It, the show where I think too much to make up for the people who don't think at all.
And boy, how accurate is that? Especially the latter part. I think any thinking compared to what those guys do qualifies as overthinking. Just theory of relativity.
Now, the funny thing is that phrase was born out of an original concept that actually had nothing to do with the frauditors, really. For the people who don't think at all came later, but the idea for it was originally, when I made this channel, was that I was someone who would look at details that most people would not give a second thought, or I would look at something and try to find reasoning in something that, let's be honest, just doesn't have any reasoning. Like trying to find logic in these guys is pointless. So then, and again, maybe I'm just overthinking it, and that's how I'd end my videos. So I'd be trying to figure out what is the reasoning, what is the why, and that's how it evolved from there. Because before, I was just going to be, talking about random, just fake conspiracy theories in fiction or lore. Like I'd look at a kids movie and think there's something here, even though the writers didn't come up with it. Like explore some random theories, basically ruin people's childhoods.
Nothing quite ruined my childhood like realizing that, what's his name? On NCIS, the young agent Timothy McGee was also Zachary Binks in Hocus Pocus.
Yes.
That messed with my mind.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, actors, if they disappear for a while and they come back, if they've aged in a way that you can't tell it was them unless you look really closely, it freaks you out. I mean, I didn't realize that Wesley Crusher was in Stand By Me with Jerry O'Connell from Sliders. It's like, it took me a long time. Like, I hadn't watched Stand By Me in a long time. So
that's like a vortex of coincidence.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And oddly enough, Jerry O'Connell, I believe he is a voice on Lower Decks. So he has joined the Star Trek. Yeah. So that's, if River Phoenix were still alive, R.I.P., I imagine he probably would have made it into a Star Trek series at some point.
Hey, if Christian Slater can pop up in Star Trek 6, anything is possible.
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't there. So it's like, who in Stand By Me hasn't been in Star Trek? It's like that's an interesting thought. I got to look back on that now.
Uh-oh. I've created a monster. Let's see, in my head, I don't know if you've ever seen the Flash series from 2014, but that wall of stuff related to Eobard Thawne that Barry had, I see you having one of those in your basement.
Oh, yeah, just all the string. Actually, it was actually in Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think they had something like that. like there's like a famous meme. It's like the guy like pointing, like he's looking away from it, but his hands are pointing at the wall. There's like red strands connecting everywhere. That actually would have been my background too if I hadn't done the whole monitors thing. But I would have, that would have been if I wasn't covering these guys.
And folks, if you're wondering, he told me before the show that what he's describing, the whole strands on the wall, he calls that string theory.
Yep. Exactly. So
I kept a straight face as long as I could.
Yeah. It took me a second actually to get back. It's like I was thinking strict. Oh crap! You got me again.
There's nothing I won't do for the cheap laugh, and that was about as cheap as they come. That was as cheap as Blue Bacon's apple juice.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, that was definitely cheap. You could even say that was your 2 cents.
That was my 2 cents. All right.
Oh, see, like I said, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad,
and sometimes they're really bad.
Oh yeah. Well, they can sometimes be so bad they're good.
That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are so bad they're good, or things that wish they were so bad they were good, but were actually just so bad they were bad, let's talk about some of the worst finales that we've seen, both in TV and film. I said it before. The absolute worst offender when it comes to finales in TV and film is Lost. I mean, we said it earlier. The whole series was just a mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in whatever it is that enigmas come wrapped in. And they just made it worse in the last season. And the last episode, that show aired, 16 years ago? I've seen websites for all 16 of those years trying to dissect and explain the Lost finale. And no explanation makes any kind of cogent sense. But then again, neither did most of Lost.
Yeah, it was so bad, though. I mean, I'll be honest, as I may have mentioned earlier, I personally never saw the show. And yet, despite having never seen it, immediately the first thing I think of was, oh yeah, wasn't that the show that kept building up a mystery that had no payoff whatsoever, and just left everyone angry? Mm-hmm. It's like that's what stood out. That's its legacy, and that's kind of sad because I remember seeing the trailer for it when it first came out. Now, admittedly, I didn't tune into it because I did have, and I still kind of do have, an innate fear of flying. So anything I see involving plane crashes, I usually avoid. Yeah. Well, except for Castaway, I watched that one because I kind of laughed at the ridiculousness of the whole thing. But it's like, like the plane's broken in half and the engine is still running. Never mind. I can't. I'm going to be overthinking it.
I will say this. Like so many other series, the first season of Lost was hard to sit through. It did get better with the second season, and they had 1 or 2 seasons worth of good stuff, and then they just lost it. No pun intended. This time. About the best thing I can say about the series as a whole and about the final episode specifically is Michael Giacchino did an epic job with the music. And the last piece of music that you hear in the finale, awesome. So, but good music design can't save an otherwise terrible show. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, people realize, what is it, like with the Star Wars films, like some people didn't like the sequel trilogy, but hey, John Williams brought his A game.
Yeah, he did.
So, so even if you don't like the movies, the music is still good. It's still timeless.
Yes.
So there's, and that's some of the things, like with certain shows, I feel bad for the people who worked on it. Like there are certain films that the production value or the production, everything looks incredible, but it suffers from a terrible script or terrible directing. And it just breaks my heart because it's like, God, they worked so hard on that. And the movie's a joke or something, or the show's a joke.
Star Trek Discovery. Sorry, I seem to have something caught in my throat.
I will tell you this. I was split down the middle on Star Trek Discovery. There are times where I didn't like it, but there were times where it shined. And in a way, I mean, I can't sit through the entire original series because there are some episodes that I think are just absolute cringe, while there's others I consider masterpieces. And when I look at it that way, I think, you know what, that's Star Trek in a whole. Like you may have a series that you like or don't like, and there may be specific episodes that you may like or don't like. Like for instance, Star Trek Voyager, I can't watch I almost can't watch anything before season. I'm gonna say season 3 or 4. Like the first few seasons were just awful. And then Deep Space Nine, I couldn't watch any of it before. There's only a few episodes I could watch, but once Michael Dorn joined the cast for Way of the Warrior, I watch every episode after that. I love them all.
So the thing with it's interesting that you make the comment that you make about Star Trek: The Original Series. In his memoirs, William Shatner points out that when Harve Bennett joined the Star Trek production team, beginning with 2, Wrath of Khan, he sat down to watch every episode of the original series, and according to Shatner, Harve Bennett commented that the original series episodes were 1/3 brilliant, 1/3 okay, and 1/3 being very bad. And that's
exactly.
And as far as the spin-off series, the less said about Next Generation Season 1, the better. That one didn't really come into its own until Season 3, but they had some turnover in the writers' room, and that to the better, I think. Same situation with DS9. They had it was still Rick Berman and Michael Piller and Ira Bear in charge, but they had some other turnover as far as writers, and that's what led to the new title sequence beginning in Season 4. That's what led to some of the more serialized storylines, and a lot of the things that, as you point out, made DS9 better the farther in they got. And Voyager had the same problem, except they had it kind of in reverse. They had the first few seasons were with one writing team that I think they'd inherited partially from the Next Generation. Because if you look at especially the first 2 seasons, they reminisce a lot of Next Generation plots, and there are a lot of direct callbacks. Season 3 was kind of a transitional year, and then beginning with Season 4, Voyager became more of an action series. And if you look at Voyager Season 4 onward and the entirety of Enterprise, there's a lot of commonality in tone, in content, and mood. And it's because they shared writers, but I'm pretty sure there was some edicts from the studio too about, be an actiony show. We have to compete with what's happening on the other networks. So
yeah, that's the thing that killed me. It's like there was action in the original series, but it wasn't the focal point of every episode. And then all of a sudden they had to make every show an action series. And I'll say this, Enterprise, to me, I mean, it had a really rocky start, but Season 4, except for the final episode, which I will not speak of, the final season was brilliant. I mean, it's almost like and if I recall, because the show was canceled, they just said, all right, dust off all the scripts that we had been saving for season finales or whatever, and we're just going to do them all back to back. And they were awesome. I absolutely loved all those episodes. I'm thinking, this is what the show should have been from the start. But and you'd think that they would have decided, let's have another network pick it up and keep it going, because there was so much story to tell. And just to kind of kick things off with how I would have done things differently, though, with Enterprise, I know that they wanted to keep the Enterprise name, but if I had it my way, I would have kept the same cast and everything and almost the same story, but I wouldn't have had the NX-01, Enterprise. I would have done the Daedalus. I would have called the series Star Trek Daedalus, and it would have been the ship with the ball and the kind of the evolution of the TOS design scheme. But I would have had that. And I would have had it lead up to, the early days of Starfleet and the Federation, the Romulan War. That was a big thing that was missing. That should have been done, and they hinted at it, but they never did it. Personally, I feel like the Romulan War should have been there instead of the Xindi plot. Yes. Personally, yes, that should have been what it was, because keep to the whole idea. Like you're flying around in a ship that's a new concept. A lot of the classic elements are not there. I wouldn't have even had a transporter. Like I would have just left that out. I would have kept it primitive, like where it feels like a connection. Like it would have been the bridge between the world we see in First Contact to the world we see in the original series. Because remember, like I would have still had a world still recovering, because it'd only been a decade after World War III when First Contact happened. So I would have, in that much time, like, no, show the world still coming back from that. Like show some residual fallout from the eugenics wars and and all that stuff, which some people argue was the Third World War, that sort of thing. So like that kind of stuff. And like that's what I would have done at least a little differently. I would have still had Scott Bakula and everyone. I got nothing against the cast. The actors all did a good job. And I would have kept them all in there. I just would have not had it be Enterprise.
Yeah.
Because that's a hell of a responsibility. Like that's a big mantle to try to be on par with. Like, because how many Star Trek shows have not had the USS Enterprise? Plenty. Mm-hmm. And they carry themselves fine enough. I mean, Voyager's not the Enterprise. Deep Space Nine, it had the Defiant, so that wasn't. So technically, it had a ship, but and I think TOS and Next Generation were the only ones with a Starship Enterprise.
Mm-hmm, they were.
Yeah. So who said that a prequel series needed an Enterprise?
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. It would indeed have made more sense to have the Romulan War versus the Xindi arc. And that's kind of the same problem that I have with Discovery, which is both of them introduced this new element that we've never heard of before, when it would have made so much more sense to mind the existing continuity. I mean,
yeah.
Based on what we see in the original series, in the time frame of Enterprise, things should have been a lot more hostile with the Klingons. So we didn't see nearly enough conflict with them, other than like maybe 1 or 2 episodes. By the way, the episode where they had James Avery as a Klingon was absolutely epic.
Oh yeah.
But when you have the voice of Shredder bellowing out orders in Klingon, you just can't top that. You pointed out that they could have done the Romulan War, and that's the thing. The glimpse that we did get, if you could call it a glimpse, of the conflict with the Romulans was wholly disappointing. Because think about it. The plot with, I want to say it was the Anar, the telepathic Andorians, and the whole thing with that mimic ship, it's like, that would have been fine in a 24th century plot. But we're in the 22nd century here. So explain to me why we've never heard of any of this in the later continuity. And I have the same kind of problem with Discovery. I mean, aside from the fact that the crew just comes across to me as dysfunctional, the fact that we have Michael Burnham as the center of attention all the time, it seems to throw the narrative out of whack. And the fact that Burnham is introduced to us as a mutineer, chronologically the first mutineer in Starfleet, it's like that tarnishes her character for the rest of the series. Now, if they had done a redemption arc in season 1, I'd feel differently. But it was 3 seasons, if not 4, before they actually put her back in uniform. And it's like, you tarnished her character.
Exactly. And here's the funny part. In Discovery, all my favorite characters, I mean, Burnham's okay. I don't hate her, but I like the other characters more. I mean, Saru, hands down, is, in my opinion, the top character. Like, I absolutely like him. Doug Jones does a great job in the performance, everything from the way he walks to the way he speaks. It's fantastic. All the other characters are great. I love Stamens, the engineer. Mm-hmm. Like he's a brilliant guy. Heck, I even Tilly made me laugh. It's like I enjoy the characters. Like I enjoyed everybody. Burnham had to be the brooding one all the time, and it's like, and had to be the central focus. It's like, no, like that's why I like Deep Space Nine more than any other series, because all the characters were together. It was an ensemble. Mm-hmm. All of them together were the central focus. You had episodes dedicated to individuals, but it was very much equal. Like, I mean, Avery Brooks would be phenomenal every time in a Cisco centered episode, but you could say the same for Michael Dorn in a Worf centered episode. Alexander Siddig does great in a Bashir centered episode. Andrew Robinson is awesome in any episode. And of course, Cole Meany as Miles O'Brien, which, I mean, they took a small, a secondary character from TNG and made him into a main. And I still laugh at the joke that Lower Decks did, where now moving on to the most important person in Starfleet history, Chief Miles O'Brien. They have a statue. There's a statue of him. Mm-hmm. It's like, I love that idea, because it's like, because that character came so far and became so awesome. I mean, there's a reason why in the pilot episode they had a scene just with him and Picard saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's great. It's like they made it meant the character had value. Like he was a gold shirt that you actually remembered his name.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that show to me it had the best example of how to do characters. Which I could understand why people who are fans of Babylon 5 and fans of DS9 argue which is better. Like to me, I feel they're the same. Like neither one ripped off the other really, and they both just got it right. They both used a formula that works.
Yeah, speaking of Babylon 5, so there's another one that's that we have to talk about. They were going along just fine, and then they tripped at the finish line. And the trivia nerd in me is dying to point out, because this is totally an episode of Trivial Pursuit, when writing the series, J. Michael Straczynski had a 5-season arc planned out. And up until the first third of season 4, everything was on track. And then all of a sudden, there was doubt about whether they were going to be renewed for a 5th season. So all of a sudden, you see the rest of season 4 and then all of season 5 compacted into the latter half of season 4. And things were just wrapped up in like a whirlwind. And then what happens at the end of season 4? They get renewed for season 5. So, well, what do we do now that we've wrapped up all of our storylines? We've ended the war. We've made Sheridan president. We've gotten our laugh at the fact that the Lynx never let anyone finish a sentence. What do we do now? Answer: let's pick up all the discarded scripts that we had and discarded for good reason and call it a season. I think out of all of season 5, there were maybe 3 episodes, not including the finale, that fit my definition of good. The one where, I can't remember the name, but the one where those guys rented the square mile of the station for that ritual where dead people come back to the life for one night.
Yes. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was. And it was moving because it was a good way to give insight to these characters. And it was also a good way to introduce Tracy Scoggins' character as the new commander. Because it seems like we got a lot of screen time with her and her ghost in that episode. So it shows they can do it right. But you look at season 5, it's just so rocky and uneven. Yeah,
they were so... No, you nailed it right on the head. They ran out of stuff to tell. It's like they jumped the shark. The show hit its peak at the end season 4. Like, I never had a problem with what they did with season 4. Like, I mean, it was kind of like the first half it was the Shadow War, then the other half was Clark's Fall. You know, those were both great, solid storylines. Mm-hmm. I admit, stretching them out a bit and adding a few extra episodes would have been fine. But still think it was a great arc for all the characters involved. And, when they introduced the character of Lockley, I don't know. In my mind, I have nothing against the actress, but the way I see it, you already had Claudia Christensen. Just make her the new commander. Why'd you have to replace Sheridan? Like, why? Like, just let everyone move up. It's like the decision they were making back in TNG when Best of Both Worlds, where they figured, Patrick Stewart might not be back. So, okay, well, let's write the episode in case he dies, but let's get things set up where now, okay, are we going to see Riker as the captain moving forward? And then, of course, they introduce Shelby as potentially the first officer that is going to be there, in the foreseeable future, all that stuff. And yeah, they were prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, like, why not just do that? Why not just have Claudia Christensen be the new person in charge? It's like, you have characters you already have established. I mean, and the secondary characters, they can step up, Mm-hmm. I mean, for the life of me, it kills me. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I forgot his name. The other guy who's on the bridge all the time. That was the only time you ever saw him, like, in the command center. He's always off to the side. He's got the headset on. I can't remember his name. See, that's what kills me. It would have been great to see him step up and become kind of the second in command. Like give him more to do. Oh, it's going to rack my brain.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name either.
Yeah, it's not Zach. He was more of Garibaldi's successor, but
you're talking about the communications guy.
Yeah, the communications guy. It's like,
yes,
like give that guy a promotion. He could be the second in command.
They did give him a promotion once. Once Sheridan declared B5 an independent state. They did give him a promotion for that. They even addressed it. He's owed the promotion, and I don't begrudge him that. But he was worried that bringing him into quote unquote their business at the time posed was a risky move. But they did address that.
Yeah.
And it was you're right. It's one of the rare times that they put the spotlight on the development of a tertiary character.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. Like, that would have been the thing to do to keep the series going. Like, it's going to sound kind of weird, but I compare it kind of to wrestling rosters.
You're right. That's totally weird.
If it looks like your A-list talent is getting ready to leave or retire or whatever, then you need to start bringing up your B-list and your tertiary performers. Like, start bringing them up so that when your A-list leaves, there's a smooth transition, and suddenly the B-list are now the A-list, and your tertiaries are now in the B-list. It's like, if you just abruptly get rid of your A-list, well, now the show is being carried by people that haven't had enough development.
I think you've just uncovered the reason why Star Trek Voyager brought us the episode Tsunkatsi. Because if The Rock retired, they wanted to see if Jerry Ryan could take his place.
I mean, yeah, we can go with that. I'll be honest. That was still one of the best cameos.
Yes, it was.
First of all, you had a great episode where you took two great actors from DS9 as well. So not only did you have The Rock, you had J.G. Hertzler and you had Jeffrey Combs. It's great to see some DS9 alum come over to Voyager. And Jeffrey Combs, my God, he played so many characters. And he had to, and I'm glad they brought it back to voice a character in Lower Decks. That was funny. But
I remember laughing when, like you said, there was an episode of DS9. You see the opening credits, and there's this guest starring one, and it takes up like half the screen. It's like, and starring and with guest star Jeffrey Combs as Wayoon and Brunt, and it's like in the same episode.
You have to think about there a second. When there was an episode that both characters appeared in, you got to give that man credit, because he had to get into two completely different makeup jobs to perform for that episode. And remember, especially the finale.
And remember, two sets of lines, and remember, two sets of two personalities. And
my God, can you imagine if the two characters had met and had a scene together? That would have been the most ridiculous to make episode ever. It's like, if Liquidator, Brunt, and Wayoon ever met, it's like, which they never did. You never saw them on screen at the same time.
It's like that whole Bruce Wayne and Batman thing. Makes you think, doesn't it?
But yeah, it's just. But getting back to Babylon 5, like they could have done so much more, and of course they do a huge time jump, and it kills because they had so much potential set up. They set up the Drac. They, like the whole thing with Londo being at the mercy of the Keeper. It's like all that stuff. But even though we got snapshots of what the future holds, like we knew that ultimately, Jakar and Londo were going to die. And we saw that happen. We did, in the, I think that was called In the Beginning, we kind of got to see Londo in the future as well as Emperor. And we know Veer's going to succeed him. Like, we know all that's going to happen, but sometimes the journey is better than the destination. Like they've shown us what's going to happen, but no, show us how it happens. Do the Drac War. I don't even think we even met Sheridan's son. They mentioned him, but they never show him.
No, we didn't meet him.
And it's like, what was the point of even creating him as a character if you never even showed him?
Right.
I mean, they couldn't find anyone to play him? What? It's like, it was so silly. They would just mention him in passing. It's like, okay. Don't mention him at all if he doesn't exist.
I should explain that I was chuckling a minute ago. It wasn't at what you were saying, but the second you mentioned Veer's name, that scene popped into my mind where Londo is considering him to succeed him as ambassador to the Centauri, but he doesn't think he's tough enough. And just a few scenes later, a fruit vendor in the Zocalo gives Veer a piece of his mind, and Veer goes back, grabs a sword, and Londo just kind of follows him out like, what's this? And the next thing we see is just Veer going nuts with that sword on this fruit vendor.
I love that.
And the guy is like, ah! So
no, I love when he comes in and gets the sword. It's like, something I can help you with? No, just need the power of this sword and I'll be right back. And it's like, and he says, what's wrong with Veer? Oh, I promoted him.
now he is ready to represent the Centauri.
That's funny is I still see Veer as freaking Flounder from Animal House.
Oh dear God.
I still see him as that character, and it's just so funny. I mean, all the characters are just so wonderful.
Yes, they are.
I mean, I love when like both Jakar and Londo refuse to negotiate with each other, so they put their stooges in there, and they both say the same thing. It's like, Veer, don't give away the homeworld. And then when Jakar says like, here, you take over this, like, oh, thank you, sir. I'm honored that you would give me this responsibility. He's like, just don't give away the homeworld. It's like, even when the two of them hated each other's guts, they were so alike. I mean, it's no wonder that that you get to see that evolve into a relationship of mutual respect and then friendship.
Nothing quite represents their arc in my mind better than that infamous scene in the transport tube. Londo is yelling for help, and Jakar is just like, you. And at the very end, he thinks they're about to die from smoke inhalation. They pry the doors open. Londo is like, yes, you rescued us. And Jakar is like, ah!
Yeah, because he said, like, he figured, oh, it's going to be worth it if we both die, because that means I don't have to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. Oh, just that everything about that show is great, and it breaks my heart at times when I remember that how many of those actors are no longer with us, and it's just.
See, now we've talked about it so much, I'm going to have to go back and binge this series.
I know, I gotta rewatch it too, because I was watching it. The last time I was watching it, oddly enough, was years ago, around the time Game of Thrones ended. So if we want to talk a segue,
don't talk about Game of Thrones' ending. That was about the worst last season I've ever seen. Worse even than Lost. Lost had the worst finale, but Game of Thrones had the worst last season. Prove me wrong.
Yeah. Oh no, it was. I mean, among the things I've reimagined or rewritten, like how would I have changed it? I mean, I kind of touched on that a little bit with the other stuff. Like, I mean, just to wrap up with B5, just you had what you could do to make it better. But Game of Thrones, God, okay. My biggest gripe with it is they wrapped it up way too quick, and they didn't spend enough time on things that, while they may have thought were trivial, these were things that spent 6 seasons building up. Like season 6, the end of season 6 was at its height, and everything was building towards something phenomenal, only for it to just peter out and completely fail. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but the season 6 finale was the one where the Great Sept was destroyed by wildfire.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Cersei blew up the Sept and basically took the throne. Now, as far as villains go, that was an amazing move that no one saw coming, and I say well played. It's like that was a great way to start it off, where it's like, okay, now we have a villain who was a pain in our ass, and we were always glad was never really in a position of full authority. There was always someone there to keep her in check. Well, now completely out of her mind and off the leash, and even as Tyrion had said, her only redeeming quality was that, she loved her kids. Well, let me put it this way. Cersei was there to be ruthless and vicious and love her kids, and she was all out of kids. So, that sort of thing, but yeah, I really would have liked to have seen more. Like, I mean, if I were to start exploring how would I have rewritten things, I would have started back at season 7, to be honest. That's what I would have changed. I mean, I've gone through a whole. It's all in my head too. That's the thing I should point out about when I'm recreating this stuff. I have no shortage of ideas, but I am terrible at executing them. Like, it is hard for me to write this stuff down, and it's tricky.
Take it from someone who's been there, not once, not twice, but 3 times. If you don't have a healthy supply of pain reliever product from a brand name that I won't mention because they're not sponsoring me.
I was going to say they should at this point.
They should at this point because I've had this same bottle for almost a year now, which is a good thing, I guess. But trying to put together a narrative like that it's a lot more difficult than people realize. And it's not just, you can write down, like Tone says, you can write down the events that you imagine happening. But what a lot of us do when we're envisioning stories like that is you envision the keystone scenes, and what happens in between is a lot more challenging because it's like, okay, so we have this epic space battle, but first, how do we get there? And B, what do we do next? And the best advice I ever got or gave when it came to writing is find someone whose writing style you like and that you respond to, and try to fashion your own story in that style. And I'll tell you point blank, when I was writing all 3 of my films, I was heavily influenced by the writing of Timothy Zahn, specifically his Heir to the Empire trilogy. And in fact, before I started writing Spectre, I had literally just finished reading the 3rd book in that trilogy. And his writing is exactly what an author's writing should be, in my opinion. You can always tell what the characters are doing. You can tell what they're thinking. You see common expressions like mentally crossing his fingers. And I mean, so that influenced my writing. So I've always said to people, if you're going to write, let that be kind of your guiding principle.
Yeah. Yeah, me, I'm a huge audiobook fan, so I try to write it down how it would transcribe. And I think I actually like what you're saying. I need to visually read on the page because that might help me figure out how to better put it out. But
get the best of both worlds. The audiobooks of the Heir to the Empire, the unabridged ones, are phenomenal, and that will help you.
Ooh. Well, as far as and the other thing I wanted to say, as far as analogies go with Game of Thrones, every character or every thread they interweave with each other, so it's a tapestry. Mm-hmm. So for every one thread you want to go down, there's all these other ones intersecting with it. Mm-hmm. So you can't just stay on that one. You end up there's different directions, and if you go past it, there's going to be questions. So it's kind of hard. So if I were to break it down to the keystone elements, if I were to rewrite season 7 and 8 and possibly even 9 or 10, I mean, it could have kept going. I would have felt
correction. They should have kept going.
Yeah. The high that we were left with at the end of season 6 was, okay, Daenerys is coming to Westeros. So at the same time, Cersei has just eliminated all of her opposition, and now she's in charge. I feel like those two things, and even though we did get to see somewhat of what it was of the aftermath of both of those, I feel like that should have been 100% the focus of the entire 7th season. Mm-hmm. I feel like the Night King plot should not have come into play for a lot longer. Heck, I wouldn't have even had Jon meet Daenerys until the beginning of season 8. I would have just had it focused entirely on what's going on in these 3 different places: the North, what Daenerys is doing to establish herself, and how Cersei is dealing with now being on the Iron Throne. And one thing that came to mind was we had a couple seasons dedicated to the War of the 5 Kings. And in a way, mirroring that, now we have the War of the 5 Queens. Now, when I say 5 Queens, we have the Mad Queen, Cersei, the Dragon Queen, Daenerys, the Queen of Thorns, Olenna Tyrell.
Played by the epic Diana Rigg, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You have what I like to call the Iron Queen, which is Yara of the Iron Islands. And then you technically had Alaria, which was the Queen of the Sands. But if I were to say what could technically have been the 5th queen would have been Sansa, because she eventually becomes Queen of the North. But the idea would be you have these 5 different factions.
You lost me
4 of them.
You lost me on Yara. Which one was she?
Oh, she was the Iron Islands. She was Theon's sister.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So she's trying to become Queen of the Iron Islands. So you have essentially this coalition of these different houses that have all faced, they all have a problem. They've all been they've either lost their lineage or they've been kind of pushed off. In this case, Yara wants to reclaim the Iron Islands because it should have been hers by right. And Orlena, her entire house got wiped out. Like 2 generations completely, incinerated. The Sands, Dorne's up for grabs now, and of course here comes Daenerys, like giving them all a common purpose. Like, hey, we all have a vendetta against House Lannister. So do I. So that's what it should be. It should have been like, okay, we're all going to do this. And it looked like it was going to go that direction. But then the biggest sin in my mind was they dumbed down Tyrion.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was the mistake, because I get it. Tyrion not being familiar with the social political landscape of Essos makes sense. He was a bit of a fish out of water. He didn't understand what the Masters would do, despite him offering some pretty fair terms. But they, of course, turned around and still attacked them. But, at the end, they still pulled a Deus Ex Dragina. And essentially, yeah, that's what I call it. Whenever the dragons just show up and save the day.
Best term ever.
Yeah. So Deus Ex Dragina, they managed to do that, which was pretty epic. And if I recall, that actually was his idea. Like, he decided, okay, let's fix it a different way. And that was, pull the whole, we're not negotiating our surrender, we're negotiating yours. And the whole, one of you has to die. And they just kill the 2 guys who immediately want to offer up the other guy, because now they can tell him, hey, guess what? You got to live. Don't piss away that.
I remember that
you're
scene.
You're only alive because we allowed you.
Yeah, I remember that scene.
We allowed it. Yeah.
That was one of the best Tyrion lines ever.
Oh yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like he was coming home to Westeros. He was going to be on his home turf.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been in the zone, especially with Varys as well. So they should have been unstoppable. He would not have made as many blunders. Like, for instance, I would not have sent the Unsullied to go after Castle Rock. Like, at this point, if I were Tyrion, I would have been past that. Like, screw the family home. It's worthless. Mm-hmm. I would have had the Unsullied go help Yara retake the Iron Islands and cut Euron off from his support. So here he is offering, alliance with Cersei, only to find out, yeah, you're the king of nothing now. So that would put a thorn in his side. That would piss him off. And so he figures, okay, fine, I'm going to go invade Dorne and kill the Sands, or bring back, or kill or capture the Sands. I'm going to do that. And I figured that's where him retaliating should have been. Mm-hmm. It should not have been, because they're not that far from Dorne. How they can intercept the fleet was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
So then again, they started doing fast travel.
Yes.
But
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up. And that's a narrative change that happened kind of gradually over the course of seasons, but you can't unsee it. Like initially, Season 1, you saw them taking the entire season to cross Westeros or Essos. But by the time of Season 7, change a scene, and all of a sudden, we're on the opposite end of the continent. And
exactly. It's like, you could stretch out the plot. That's why I said, the Season 7 should have been nothing but the War of the Five Queens. And the thing also to keep in mind, that whole first meeting of, okay, what do we do? It's like, well, we have dragons. Let's just go and burn King's Landing. I think what no one ever thought to ask or say, and technically Tyrion was able to convince her, the whole, I'm not here to be Queen of the Ashes. How ironic, considering that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
But the whole thing that they should have pitched to her, that I think, and that's the other thing too, her turning evil, I'm not saying it was a bad idea, but it was too rushed. We were too far. We were too far into the show, mm-hmm. well over 3/4 to do an about face. It just wouldn't have worked. It really should have started earlier.
I looked at that less as turning evil and more of her kind of following the family curse, for lack of a better term. Because you remember, Aerys, the Mad King, for whatever reasons you ascribe to it, he was just mad and burn them all. Yeah. I looked at that less as a symptom of evility and more just a sign of him being that far gone. And so when I started seeing Daenerys starting to slip into acts that technically could be considered villainous, I looked at it as, okay, she's kind of going mad too, because that runs in the family.
Yeah, but the problem is you had those who weren't like that because Aegon wasn't like that at all, and her brother was clearly the psychopath.
Yes.
So, like, the egotist. So in a way, I figured she was, as far as the genetic lottery was concerned, that she was safe. I mean, granted, she lived a difficult life, up to that point, and she had to go through a lot of different trials, but we got to see her grow and overcome those things. And like I said, the direction they were going with this seemed to imply that she was going to be something different. And the whole comment of, I'm going to break the wheel, I thought to myself, okay, that is such a good line. So my first thought is she planning on essentially going all that way to destroy the Iron Throne and essentially splinter the Westeros back into 7 kingdoms? I mean, that'd be a heck of a circular arc with her family. Her ancestor came and conquered. She's there to unconquer or whatever. But that's what got me to the idea of Varys and Tyrion telling her, okay, you've come here. Don't come here as a conqueror. Come as the liberator. Because knowing that Cersei has just taken power by doing something pretty tyrannical, and knowing the kind of character she was leading up to that, after 6 seasons of her clearly being someone who lacks any kind of empathy for the common people, for just, I mean, let's be honest, just being an insufferable bitch, that there should have been more of that. It should have been her essentially asserting her authority by basically meaning, okay, either obey me, or I'm going to have my 7-foot-tall zombie knight, crush your head. Essentially that, be someone who she has to intimidate and use fear to get everyone to obey her. And bear in mind, there was a population that only a couple seasons ago was mocking and despising her. So she clearly would not give 2 damns if the people in the city were suffering or whatever. And if they were complaining, it's like, well, they're complaining that they're starving. Well, let's have less mouths to feed now and just go kill them all or something, like that sort of thing. She would be very much she would be Joffrey dialed up to 11. Yeah, like that kind of thing. Like, we'd see clearly that's where he got it from.
Yeah.
So I would see her more doing that. Like, I really thought there was potential with Sam's father, Randall Tarley, when he arrives, and they all have to swear fealty. And when he's talking to Jaime, he says, like, yeah, she hopes you'll be loyal. It's like, or what? She'll burn me alive? Pretty much implying, like, I'm not going to refuse her.
Yeah.
It's like, she blew everybody up who displeased her or whatever. So like the idea that not everyone is going along with this because they want to, but they feel they don't have a choice. Now, of course, Randall Tarley was an asshole, so by all means, him being willing to betray, House Tyrell and take Highgarden, totally get it. His son, on the other hand, I feel like would be the person more calling into question, hey, should we really be doing this? And so that doubt would be there, so that when the time came, and if I may skip ahead a bit, when she defeats the Lannister and Tarly armies, and she, instead of the whole offer of, bend the knee or die, it should have been, here's my offer. Pretty much end your alliance with Cersei and march your army home. That's it. Like, do that and you can live. Randall Tarley, being the stubborn ass he is, would probably still say no. And she would, of course, execute him just as she did with Drogon burning him. His son, on the other hand, I see him taking the offer. I would see him saying, you know what? Okay. Like, because I do understand, like, I'm the future of my house. My men will all die if I make the stupid decision of, no, we're not going to withdraw. So as the new head of House Tarly, he would say, all right, screw it, we're out of this. And thus, they've been knocked out of the fight. The Reach is weakened, but not necessarily gone. So that round goes to Daenerys when, Cersei's was having a Euron invade Dorne and dealing with the Sands. Which, by the way, incidentally, I would not have killed all of them.
No?
I probably would have, Ellaria would definitely die, and one of her daughters would die, but I would have at least kept one of the other ones alive. I probably would have picked Obara Sand, just because of the 3 of them, I don't know. I thought she was the cutest. Anyways.
At least you're
that's just me.
Yeah,
that's just me. I'm just a guy, so. But the idea is I would have at least had one of them around, but the idea is, okay, the Ironborn kind of, knocked Dorne out of the fight for the moment. So it's like, okay, it's kind of a back and forth. And bear in mind, while all this is going on, the third faction that has remained completely neutral in all this is the North.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, whichever side the North joins will tip the balance of this war. And meanwhile, in the North, Jon's got to contend with now being king of the North, which that was so rushed. Like he got to be it, but then he leaves only a few episodes later.
Mm-hmm.
No, season 7 should be him entirely being there. It should be him having to make decisions, him and Sansa kind of being at odds, but over time she kind of comes around to his way of thinking. And all the while, you've got Littlefinger there, he's hatching a plan to essentially manipulate Sansa because he realizes, okay, if I can get close to her and get her to my side, we can get rid of Jon, and with her, if I control her and she controls the North, I control the North.
Mm-hmm.
And what better way for me to really cement my position to basically offer the North back to Cersei? So like that whole thing, that would be his ultimate plan. Because he always wanted power.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the seeds of that would just be sown slightly. And then only at the end of the season does Jon leave for Dragonstone.
Mm-hmm.
And, to surprise of everyone, he leaves Sansa in charge, which to Littlefinger, he's foaming at the mouth at this. It's like, great, 2 birds with 1 stone. Jon's not here, and Sansa's in charge. And, at the moment, she's the only Stark in Winterfell. The other 2 haven't arrived yet because, as I said, I would have made things take a little longer for Arya to get back. I would have had her do more faceless assassinations things,
Although you got to admit, the way that she handled
the phrase,
especially Walder Frey at the end of that season was
that was epic.
And you're right; it's a shame we didn't get more of that because that would have been perfect. I think you mentioned it earlier. The ultimate season of paranoia would be if we had all these killings happening, and after each one of them, the face comes off. Oh, it's Arya.
Yeah. So it would have shown that she's been going around on a murder spree, but only returning home once she finds out, oh, my family's back in control of Winterfell. Okay. And, that was fine. And as for Bran Stark, the biggest changes I would have made, first and foremost, is give him back some personality, for God's sake. I mean, they made him such cardboard. It's like, I feel bad for the actor. It's like, did you want to act like this? It's like, I don't think you're going to work again because of this. But, but they made him just so dull. And no, he should still be human.
Mm-hmm.
If he's someone who is being entrusted with protecting humanity, he needs some humanity.
And when your character description boils down to do an imitation of cardboard, you've taken it and run it in the wrong direction.
I think you even said it. He was not a character. He was a prop.
Yeah. And that's, as I see it, that's basically what they did. Because I get that they were trying to make him seem otherworldly and disconnected from this reality because he could see so much more and a simple terrestrial existence like he had known before. Yeah, it is small. It is insignificant. But guess what? For the rest of us, that's life. So
yeah, and I feel like he should still value it. I mean, Max von Sydow's version of the Three-Eyed Raven, he still had emotion. Mm-hmm. He still acted like a human being. So that's why I said give him that, because then the decisions he makes are motivated by being human, but he also has knowledge. So he can make well-informed decisions, even if they are emotionally based. So, you can have that. And because think about it, like if things are so small and trivial, why would he even help Sansa expose Littlefinger? Mm-hmm. It's like, to him, it's like, oh, this is a worldly problem beyond me. It's like, but no, like he would have a reason to contribute to this. And of course, I'm not going to make him king. That's spoiler alert. Now that is not how I would end this. Like hell no. But the things I would have done with him to change him up is, he's more human. Among the other abilities he has, like Max von Sydow's version, he can bring other people into his visions. Like, he can put their hand on him, he can go into whatever dream world he goes into, and that person will also, their eyes will also turn white, and they'll be there too. So it's a way to provide exposition, to share what he knows with someone else if he has to prove to them what he's seeing. As far as what he sees, he could see the past, he could see the present, and I'll even say he could see a little bit of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much as like a clear picture, but more like how should I put it, like a rough idea of what it's going to be like. And which is helpful because he can kind of see where everyone's destinies are headed. And, whether they're good or bad, like he can't say for sure. It's very cryptic.
Always in flux, the future is.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have had that in there, and as far as, when he shows up, again, he doesn't trust Littlefinger either, but, and he of course learns the truth of that he was he was the one who tried to have him assassinated or something, but, that he betrayed their father. Like, he sees all this, but we as the audience would be wondering, why isn't he saying anything about it? And of course, as season 8 begins and Jon's away at Dragonstone, in the north, we're seeing Littlefinger, he's getting his hooks into Sansa. Like, he's essentially starting out, at first she doesn't want anything to do with him, but over time, things are starting to happen that she can't quite figure out. Like, she kind of has to seek counsel from him because the people she'd rather seek it from are either unavailable suddenly or something. So, and at the same time, we see that behind the scenes, Littlefinger's engineering all this. Mm-hmm. He's got a network of informants who are feeding him information, planting disinformation. Like, they're causing all this stuff because he's trying to make it so that she has to turn to him. And over time, throughout the course of the season, even as Bran and Arya show up and everything, and they have their objections, vocally and publicly, of her being more and more accommodating of him, we're starting to get the sense of, oh God, she's falling back into the trap. Like, he's manipulating her. I would even go as far as to say that maybe he puts her into a position where, okay, the Vale is going to pull its support unless a way to cement the alliance, basically meaning she would have to marry him or something. Mm-hmm. And that would be something we, the audience, would be like, oh, hell no, like, don't do it. But it looks like more and more like she's getting played by him. And like I said, we after seasons of this, we've come to know it and we come to hate it. And of course, we would all be like, damn it, Sansa,
And see, that's one of the key elements narratively that I never quite understood with Game of Thrones. So look at Littlefinger and look at Varys. Both of these guys obviously have their own agendas. Every conversation, you can hear it. Oh, and yeah. I mean, right from the moment, even if I didn't know a thing about what types of characters Aidan Gillian usually plays, I mean, you can see it in the way he's presented. This guy is going to be double dealing in every single. He's like Dr. Smith in the new Lost in Space. Every scene that she is in, she's lying. You just don't know what she's lying about. And it's the same thing with Lord Baelish. That he's pursuing some bigger game, but you can never quite tell. And the same with Varys. He always seemed to be this amiable, friendly guy, but you never quite knew what his end game was because no one builds a network of what he called little birds for nothing.
Yeah, he was clever. And I even have a little something for him later to make it interesting. Because the way he departed the series was terrible. I mean, I when they did the script reading, you could see the actor was visibly like pissed. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, really? This is how my character ends? Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't blame him at all. I would never give him that ending. But the pretty much the payoff to watching Sansa slowly get manipulated by Littlefinger and falling into the same traps she's been falling in for seasons, when it all comes to a head where he gets what he wants, he's communicating with Cersei, basically saying that soon the North will be mine, and we'll be in a position to support your efforts to fight the Dragon Queen. Well, it looks like it's gonna come to a head. His informants are giving him the information that he needs, and he's sending messages back to Cersei. Well, then comes the scene where it looks like he's successfully turned her against Arya, and we get the same scene as before. But what changes is, she reveals the whole damn time, even all the way back from season 6, when she, in the last episode he tried to make the moves on her and she said no. It was at that moment she had decided, okay, I'm going to beat this guy at his own game. That she's been playing him from the start, and everything that he's been doing with those informants, Arya is shown with those letters and all that stuff. And then it kind of shows in flashback, every single one of those people was her wearing a face. They essentially set him up because it's inspired by the plot or the plans that Queen Elizabeth I spy master, Walsinger, I think his name was.
Sounds right.
That he engineered to reveal the plot by Mary Queen of Scots to have Queen Elizabeth assassinated so she could usurp her. Well, the idea was, her lines of communication were cut while she was under house arrest. So I'm going to create those lines of communication for her to use so that she essentially, they know everything that she's doing. They read every one of her letters. They know everything she's up to. And they're basically helping her plan this so that her treason is painfully obvious. And that's what they do. And that's basically what they do to Littlefinger.
Yeah.
Like, it all comes crashing down. Like, all the evidence is there. Everything that they've been gathering on him just is let out right there. And the whole North knows. Everyone in the Knights of the Vale know. Everybody knows that he's a traitor. And it just makes that scene of him, despite all of his cunning and sly and wit, he throws himself on his knees and begs for mercy, weeping like a pussy. It's like he knows he's screwed. Like, and that would be so much more satisfying because we would have been watching a whole season of him looking like he's going to win, only to find out, dude, you've been played from day one.
Yes.
And immediately a 180 on Sansa, meaning, oh my God, that whole time she was doing it only for his benefit. She was playing the audience too. She made everybody think that she was falling for it, only to be the one actually pulling the strings.
And that would have added some much needed depth to Sansa's character, I think. That's
exactly.
That was I saw what they wanted to do with Sansa's character through the series, but nothing to me sums up Sansa's character than when Sophie Turner turned up in that X-Men movie. And the reaction I heard from everybody was, oh God, she's playing the same role, another whiny character. And I'm like, there you go. She didn't get the development and power, I think, or not power, gravitas that she should have had as a character until like the very, very end. But by then...
because she's Jean Grey.
Yeah, but by that point, the damage is done, and we already have 6 seasons worth of taste in our mouth about who this character is, and you're not going to change that in a single episode or even a couple episodes in the last season.
Yeah, exactly. So a whole season of her manipulating him would have been perfect, and it just would have made her out so badass. And bear in mind, she used him as a means to an end, because when he's dead, she still has control of the Vale.
Yes.
So now she has the North, and she has two kingdoms essentially under her control now. She has the North and she has the Vale. So there we go. Like, now the North is even stronger. So here's, Jon going off to, seek assistance from Daenerys. At the same time, the North has now been bolstered to be more valuable. So it's someone that Daenerys definitely sees the value in having as an ally. And that's another thing too. The whole demanding he bend the knee thing. I wouldn't do that, because in season 6, when Yara shows up, the whole idea was, I'll help you if you recognize me as Queen of the Iron Islands. And Tyrion asked the question, what if everyone starts demanding their independence?
Yes.
To which she said, she's not demanding, she's asking, and the others are free to ask as well. Where the hell was that?
Yeah, exactly.
As in that should have still been her policy upon arrival. Because who says she has to rule all 7 kingdoms? She could still be the one on top ultimately, but it's better if she can't have them as subjects, have them as allies. Because unlike Cersei, she would recognize Northern independence in exchange for a mutual alliance. It's like, you know what? Fine.
That's the key shortfall to a lot of these characters, though. are so focused on getting power, as much power as they can, whatever they have to do, they get short-sighted. And what you just described is a perfect missed opportunity. Someone less fixated on power would have seen the strategic opportunity that was laying out. Build consensus, take care of the immediate problem, and save the power struggles for another day. Or at least that's what I think. We're about out of time, but real quick, what do you see as the big finish for your version of the Game of Thrones plot? What's the big finish?
Oh, well, I mean, there is an epilogue I had in mind. Let's see let me try to condense it down really fast. First of all, I would have had, for Jon versus the Night King, the only way to defeat him is to essentially become him. So Jon fights the Night King, mortally wounded, but Bran saves him by plunging dragonglass in his heart, because Bran has the power of the Children of the Forest, so he's a green seer. He makes Jon into another Night King. As a result, the army of the dead has to now hold and wait for one king. So the two of them fight it out. Jon wins, but now he's cursed as the Night King, so he has to go north of the wall with Bran, with the Children of the Forest. Maybe someday they can restore him to normal. The point is, they neglected the first Night King. They're not going to make that mistake again. So that's his exit. Daenerys, when she talks to Bran, she basically does hint at asking him for the future, will I sit on the Iron Throne? And Bran basically tells her, it's up to you. Either you will rule or your child will. Mm-hmm. To which the question comes up, wait, how can I have kids? She can get pregnant, but her children won't survive unless she gives her life for theirs. For it, I should say. So if she chooses in her heart that she'd rather see her child live, she will die, and her child will be the one to live. Well, shortly before the Battle of the Night King, Jon knocked her up. So after he's gone, and when they have to deal with Cersei, she does find out she's pregnant.
And that fits.
And so she has to think, well, what am I going to do?
That fits the narrative tropes for Game of Thrones, too. There was so much up-knocking throughout the 7 seasons. I almost lost track of who was pregnant by who. And trying to keep those names straight. So-and-so of so-and-so, first of his name. It's like...
Well, in this case, I mean, I have to skip a few things, but I'll do minor bullet points that I'm sure people are going to be wondering, wait, I want to know more about it. Instead of Missandei being the one who gets captured and executed, I actually would have had Varys be the one. And I know some people might hate that idea, but he gets captured and executed by Cersei, but shortly after his death, Tyrion gets a letter from him from someone who was given instructions was, hey, if I die, give this to Tyrion. And the letter basically explains, it's read later, but he reads it and he realizes what Varys was setting in motion. Cersei's getting the Golden Company, but she doesn't realize that the Iron Bank and the Golden Company have been basically turned to Daenerys' side by Varys. The reason? Because Varys is not, that is just an assumed name. His birth name was Blackfyre.
Oh.
So Varys is descended from Targaryen bastards. Targaryen bastards founded the Golden Company. So he had ties to them to convince and made a better offer. So just when Cersei thinks, okay, their armies are weakened by the fighting the dead and all that stuff. There's, one dragon left, all those things. Suddenly the tables are turned and she's the one now surrounded. So she's going to go with the nuclear option and go for all the wildfire. Mm-hmm. Well, Jaime, he doesn't turn back to being evil. He wants to go and try to convince her to stop this. He manages to get all the way there. The Hound, by the way, fights his brother. We still get Clegane Bowl, but
wait, you still get what? Clegane Bowl?
It's called Clegane Bowl.
We
still get that.
Best name ever.
Yeah. Well, I didn't come up with it, but it's still awesome.
It's still awesome.
Yeah. But here's the thing I would have done for him to make his arc end awesomely. In his time spent with Beric, a lot of times his fear of fire and his doubt about Lord of Light and all that stuff is always coming up. When it comes time for him to face the mountain, he does the flaming sword thing. Basically showing, okay, the Hound he's faced his fears, which means we know, okay, Not only is he badass, he's ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's ready to say, you know what? I may die, but I'm going to do it looking awesome and kicking your ass. And surely enough, he does. He kills his brother, but not before getting mortally wounded himself. Arya shows up to finish him, like to basically grant him peace. She finally does that. It's a good death ending for him. For Jaime and Cersei, he and Brienne make it to the throne room, and he shows up and he's going to try to convince her to stop. But when Brienne shows up, she gets pissed. She wants to shoot Brienne with Joffrey's crossbow. Jaime instead gets in the way and he gets shot in the chest, and he's going to die. So when she gets close to him, and she's saying, "I'm sorry," and he says, "So am I," and he stabs her in the heart.
Ooh.
And so if anyone was going to kill Cersei, it would have been him. And in the end, he gets the death he wants, because after she falls over dead, he dies in Brienne's arms. Because that's what he said. He wanted to die in the arms of the woman he loved, so it shows, okay, his redemption arc is complete. When this is all, and that's the end of it. Like the battle is won and all that stuff. And then we get a time jump. And what we see is now the decision, what happened in those 9 months. In this case, well, actually more than 9 months, years passed. Daenerys decided her child was going to rule. So she spent those 9 months mending relations with everyone, rebuilding King's Landing, making sure that the world that she was going to leave behind was going to be safe for her son. She entrusts Tyrion to raise her son and rule as regent. So what we do is we fast forward to her son coming of age. Her son, Eddard Targaryen, so named after Ned Stark and with the Targaryen name, he's about to come of he's come of age. He's going to be crowned that day. We get a few bits and pieces here and there of what's going on, like some former Lannister loyalists are plotting to assassinate him, but then one of their own suddenly betrays and kills them all, pulls off their face, and it's Arya. So she's been doing that all this time. She's been protecting Jon's son from the shadows, because Bran's been sending ravens from north telling him, hey, there's some people plotting this here, so go get them.
Yeah.
So that's been going on. As I said, Tyrion's raised Eddard as his own son, and thanks to Tywin, he knows everything he shouldn't do as a father. So
yeah,
he's grown as a better character. If anything, his ending is very satisfying because he's in a position that he's respected and appreciated, and he's part of a family that doesn't despise him. So when it comes time, they're all in the throne room. It's time, it's time for him to be crowned. We see where everyone is. Brienne's head of the Kingsguard with Podrick, just like before. Sam and Gilly are the Lord and Lady of Highgarden and of the Reach, and they have like 6 kids. It's revealed. What is it? And it's revealed that Tyrion actually married Sansa, and they had 2 children of their own as well. So he raised 2 children along with their son. The son his other son's name is Jaime, and the daughter's name is Catelyn. And funny enough, because his 3 kids have grown up together, Catelyn likes Eddard Targaryen, and of course she's bitching to Sansa. It's like, hey, we're a perfect match. Please let it happen. And she's just like, your grandmother is laughing at me right now. And she's ruling the North. So Bronn, he got Casterly Rock. And he's finally married a woman and has 2 squabbling sons, which is what he wanted. Trying to think. Yara's Queen of the Iron Islands. So when it's all over, like we see everyone's had a relatively decent ending. Eddard is crowned. The city's happy about it. The future's uncertain, but it's looking okay. Like things are, we'll enjoy it while you can. Camera cuts like far north, beyond, way in the lands of always winter. There's an older Bran with Jon, and he's sharing vision with him so he can see what's happening. And Bran says, all is as it should be. And the 2 of them head off into the fog, and you see the other children of the forest kind of coming out of it and joining them. And they're going off to the north, probably forever. But who knows? Maybe someday Jon might come back as a human. But that's how it would end. So it's a bittersweet ending. Daenerys dies, but she chooses to let her child live over her ambition. They make sure, the right people are in charge, making sure that the people do love this monarch. Because that's the other thing, too. Like, Eddard's, he spent his life being someone that the people like. So by the time he's crowned, like everyone likes him, and Tyrion's won back respect. He's no longer the imp. People see him as more than what he is. He's not just a dwarf. So, and that's pretty much how I would end it. It's not perfect. I've heard better ones. Some people might disagree with this idea, but it's how I would have done it.
Just about anything. I put it to you that just about anything would be better than what we actually got. And what I just heard sounds like a pretty good approach to me. So maybe I'm overthinking it, but I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my job.
Oh, whoops.
I'm glad.
Hey,
But yeah, I've written so many other ideas for other shows and movies, but I'm glad I got to share one of them.
Well, and we only got through a few of the ideas that Tones has. We talked before we rolled tonight. We talked about so much more, and it's not the first time this week that we haven't had enough time to get through everything we wanted to get through, but there's always next time. There is certainly always next time. Because I think you mentioned that, as I check my notes to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn, but it seems like you'd mentioned you had some ideas for some other franchises like Star Trek, Back to the Future, Star Wars. So there is lots more. So we will, when schedules permit, we will definitely have you back to hear more. So,
for sure. So, I'd love to come back on. I appreciate you having me here, and I'm just glad to finally have someone to share this with, because it's kind of hard, like it gets buried in the forums and stuff. But.
Well, like I've said, if you want to share ideas with fellow nerds, this is the channel, because I dare say that on no other channel on the web would you find Star Trek and The Price is Right and a song by L7 in the same movie. But here we have just such a combination. So for anyone who would be interested in watching a film fitting that description, this episode is for you, or at least it was meant to be for you. So if you didn't feel like it was for you, then you're in the wrong place. So there you go. That's my brilliant soliloquy for the night. Tones Overthinks It. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me again, Brandon. It's truly a pleasure, and keep doing what you do, and definitely looking forward to doing this again, whether it's here or you're welcome to come onto my channel as well.
That's all for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, this is Brandon Bridges reminding you the best way to be is B squared. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Screw Flanders.
Stupid, sexy Flanders.
It's like I'm wearing nothing at all.